All right, welcome to the Apostolic Classroom. This is a bonus episode. We are Stephenless. He's probably praying or something spiritual. But we just had, Jeremiah and I were bouncing some ideas off and thought this would be a good kind of bonus episode to talk through some issues, talk through a particular issue that is. And so, Jeremiah, you're doing a lot with language. You're working through Hebrew and have a grip on a couple other languages as well. Your master's work, and then even studying after your master's, looking towards some other education. And so the Bible's written in primarily Hebrew and Greek with, some other in languages as well. So for someone that does not speak Hebrew and Greek, how can they use tools and how can they kind of dig into some of those original languages and it be beneficial to them? There's probably a couple ways that we could approach this, but maybe we could just talk about at first, what are the benefits of kind of using tools and learning some of the original languages?
Yeah, I think some of the big benefits is, for me, it has strengthened my confidence in the Bible. I think I'll say this first. I think having a great translation, you'll get, with no matter what language you're reading in, you're going to have to read things more than once. And that's one of the beauties I think of Scripture, is that you grow the more you read it. And you can't shortcut that. And so I don't think any simplification of language, I don't know that is helpful, because that kind of misses the point of growth that happens as you read the Bible. And so I think one of the big benefits of learning a biblical language is that you get to interact and engage with, maybe you get some more clarity for certain things. There are certain texts where I've read, and the clarity that has come from reading it in the original language has just kind of made some things highlighted to me. And it's not that I couldn't have gotten that from the English, but it has helped me appreciate what is written there. One of the things that comes to mind is some of the emotion that I get from the biblical text. One verse that I think of specifically is in the book of Nehemiah, when they come to him and they give him word of basically these terrible things that are happening, and it says as he read it, he just kind of slumped over and was weeping, and he couldn't stop weeping. And just the emotion that you feel from the text when you read, like, man, the intensity of what was being experienced and the burden that Nehemiah had for the people in returning home, those are things that I think are just immeasurable that you get from the original language.
So in short, a good English translation is great.
Yeah.
And what you need, right? But having those nuances can be helpful.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things that I'd say is, you are not disqualified. And I don't think anyone is more spiritual or more saved than anyone else, or has a deeper or greater understanding, revelation, I should say, just because they do have or don't have access to original language. Some of the most incredible things that I've learned about Scripture have been communicated to me in English. So that's the thing, is God, I don't believe that God has hidden himself from people who are seeking him. He hasn't. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't study the original language. That's what I do, and that's what you've done as well. But I think it's just one of those big benefits when you do sit down and start studying language. Some of the nuance just brings it sharpens what we get in the English. And I think that that's so beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, just to share a nuanced example that I think is very impactful is when you're looking at Jesus on the cross in Luke, and in the English, again, we're not berating English, the King James or anything, but in the English it says, "And Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." In the Greek, the language is implying a continuous statement, meaning that Jesus kept saying, "Father, forgive them, Father, forgive them." And so when you think about Jesus on the cross, and it's a workout to breathe, right? You're having to lift yourself up and then let yourself go back down just to inhale and exhale. I mean, the Romans, this is a torture device. And the fact that he is having to work out just to breathe, but the text in the Greek is showing us that, at least it appears, that he is continuously saying, Father, forgive them. That hits you, right? Because it's like, man, he's working out just to pray this, Father, forgive them.
Literally wasting the breath that he has to work so hard to say forgive them. Yeah. Those are some of those things that it's beautiful. There are gems that you get in the original language that are just incredible.
Yeah. So what are some tools for people, or I don't know, or maybe warnings to keep in mind? I don't know, whichever avenue you want to take there, but what are some things that people can do to make sure that they are using these ancient languages properly, because they may not be fluent in Hebrew or Greek? So whether you want to take that as something to keep in mind or like a tool of a way forward.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. One of the first things that would come to mind is, so biblical Hebrew and biblical Greek are not languages that are spoken today. People do speak Greek today, and people do speak Hebrew today, and the modern Hebrew and modern Greek are descendant of these more ancient languages, and they are similar in many regards, but they are different to the extent that the language develops. And so the first thing that I would say is being a native speaker of these things does not necessarily qualify someone as having engaged with the text well. So my first maybe caution would be, and encouragement, there are resources that you might read that has something valuable to say that comes from someone who might be an original speaker of those languages, but that does not necessarily mean that they have something good to say all the time.
So can I say this, and you tell me if this is a little bit of what you mean by that? Just because they're Jewish today does not mean that they have this special insight into the Old Testament that you and I could not get just from reading the English.
Yeah, I think so. And it was one of the things that I think about is like, so I've engaged some with the Midrash and the writings around some of the Old Testament. And there are always very fun things that are raised, fun points that are raised.
I'm sorry, because neither you and I we just got done talking about the usefulness of the original language. So we're not trying to be disparaging about this, but just because someone is Jewish, that doesn't mean that they have this greater revelation, is essentially what I'm asking, if that's what you're referring to. Yeah,
essentially, because now I think it could help them as they study the text, and it could serve as an aid, but hermeneutics is important. And hermeneutics can... some people can approach hermeneutics, or I should say approach a biblical language with a perception that a word, let me reframe this. You're sitting in a high school English class, and we're talking poetry and art in a modern context. And the English teacher might say, well, a word or this, we might contextualize it in this way, and they offer something that is probably pretty clearly not meant in that poem. But, they have the creative liberty in their approach to words, and they are English native speakers. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're right if they're allegorizing a word or even a letter. And so I say that because, as language has developed, there are different stages where languages are used differently. One of the things that comes to mind as probably a danger that I would think is a danger is the use of verbs. And in Hebrew and Greek, there are, especially in Greek, there are different case endings which imply different things. One of the things is like active or passive or middle deponent in Greek, right? And that could mean different things. In Hebrew, there are different, I wouldn't say there are different aspects. I wouldn't say tense. There are different aspects to verbs, and it implies whether something is completed or incomplete. And the danger is, and one of the things that I think we both might have seen in different places, where you are on, here's a resource that you can use to access biblical languages, but you've got to have humility as you access them, is they will give you access to maybe the Strong's Concordance and a definition of that word, or possible definitions of a word. And you might get a word that, as you pull it up, it has different meanings, or it could have different meanings, right? And it is not a good practice to pick the meaning that you think would make the most sense and apply it if you don't know the language well. I say that because one of the words that comes to mind immediately is the Greek word lambano, which could mean take. In the active sense, yeah, probably. Could mean receive. In the passive sense, yeah, probably, right? So it's going to have divergent meanings depending on the tense, or if it's in the middle deponent, which does it mean? Well, you have to read the context. So in something like that, like you have a verb, and we should not just pick. Another thing would be to ask yourself, why has no translation ever translated it in this way? And why has all or most translated it this way? That's maybe a good test if you don't know languages. Why has it always been translated this way?
Yeah, can we back up just a little bit? Because I think you're building some really good pieces of advice there. Some people might be familiar with something like Blue Letter Bible, where you can go into a verse and hit interlinear, and it has either the Greek or the Hebrew laid out. You can click on that, and what you're just referring to, it has a list. Here are ways that it's used in Scripture. And in a lot of cases, it will tell you how many times that word is used, and different facts about how that word is used throughout the Bible. But it is unwise to look at all those definitions. It's kind of outlined, right? It's got like number one, and then it has a definition, then subpoint A, B, and then it goes down to subpoint A, B. It's unwise just to take one of those and just kind of put it in, because as you were referring or just said, that context is extremely important, because this may not be the best example, but in English, if we use the word running, your nose can run. You can run for office. You can use that word in a different scenario where, something, you're running away with this or whatever. Yeah. There's different ways or literally running, right? There's different ways to use that word, but context is going to determine how that word should be used. Yeah.
No, that's exactly right. And even you might even see this where, like, you get into a Hebrew verb, and you might see where a word has to break, and then another stem, it has to smash or destroy. And there's the same sense to the word, but depending on the stem of the verb, it's going to have a very different not very different definition, but it's going to have a definition that implies either causation or intensity or preparation or reception. And so it's just the way that you select those words, the definition matters, and it's important not to do it hastily or just run with the first definition that fits something that you might like to preach. I think that's my biggest caution is, I don't think that you need to be a biblical language expert. I think it helps, but I don't think you need to do that to impress people in the pulpit. And I think that's the biggest thing, is humility and saying, okay, I don't know the language. I don't know any person that would go up to maybe someone that's a native Spanish speaker and say, okay, the word adios could also mean. And so when someone said that to so-and-so, they meant this. And it's like, well, you probably wouldn't argue that just because you looked up the definition of that word in a dictionary from a language that you don't know. And if that person who speaks Spanish fluently says, actually, that's not at all what it means, you probably would be very hesitant to like argue with them because you know they know the language, right? I think it's sad, but I think biblical languages is one of the only, maybe more, but one of the only times where you have people who don't know the language that will make very strong arguments from the language that they don't know based on the language. Yeah. And my caution is not, don't use the language. My caution is be humble when you use the language, because I think even both of us who have had some pretty fun, extensive biblical language training have to approach it humble and with humility, because the more that we know about the languages, the more that we feel confident in even a good English translation, where we're like, yeah, I don't necessarily even have to use the language. It helps support and it helps strengthen. And if you have the opportunity to study those things, do it. But you should feel confident, especially going to the pulpit, going to a Bible study, that you've got God's word in your hand, and you can preach faithfully from that. Yeah,
and I think what at least some of the things you're pointing to is there are people that come in, and I've heard this, I know you have, where they might say something, well, the translators got this word wrong and it actually means this.
Yeah.
And every situation is probably different. Yeah. Maybe they got on Blue Letter Bible or Strong's Concordance and they just kind of chose which word. Other times maybe they heard someone that has dabbled in language and made an argument. There could be different situations. But here's something that I have gleaned, and you can comment on this if you'd like, is that these are languages we're talking about. They're not mystical.
Yeah.
Meaning there are grammatical rules that are involved, and then sometimes there are abnormalities.
Yeah.
Hebrew has a lot of those. But these are languages. They're not mystical in the sense of we don't just pick a word and it becomes this deep meaning that no one else understands what it is because, we looked up the 10 different ways the word can be used. There are rules that are connected to these actual languages.
Yeah. I agree with that. I really do. And I think that gets back to what I was saying earlier is you are not more or less spiritual because you do or do not have these languages on both sides. Knowing this language doesn't make me more spiritual or less spiritual.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I think sometimes the perception can cut two ways. Oh, they think that they're smart. They think that having this language makes them more spiritual, and actually it makes them stiff as a board. They're not really spiritual. They're just academic and heady. It's like, well, that doesn't make them less spiritual. What matters is your approach to, I think, the study of biblical languages. And if you are studying the languages to grow in your relationship with God, if you're studying them as an act of worship, I think it falls within that category when Jesus says to love God with your mind. And if you're studying it to grow in your relationship with God, grow in your understanding of God, that's what's big, that's what's important. But it requires humility. Yeah. And on the other side, if you don't pursue studying biblical languages, if your goal for not pursuing it is because you're resisting, I'm not doing it because this is the academics, and it's like, well, you're cheating yourself of an opportunity to grow in your relationship with God.
Yeah. And humility on both sides, right?
Yeah.
And because I really like how you're saying that, even Paul based arguments in Galatians on language.
Yeah.
The singularity of seed, not seeds.
Seeds, yeah.
And that's a language argument.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to use these things, but as we keep saying, just be wise and be humble about it. So maybe, because we've kind of looked at some of the warnings, what would be some very practical things that people can use or things that they can study and look at, or maybe even start? Where's a starting place? If people are like, I don't really know any Hebrew or Greek, I don't want to take an academic class, I don't have that much time or maybe even financial resources to commit to a class.
Yeah.
What are some things that someone could do to start? Maybe that's a good place.
Make something up. I'm just kidding. I heard a joke a while back where someone had said someone was preaching And they had said this preacher famously would get up and kind of make up things, but say, in the Greek or in the Hebrew, this word means, and then he just hoped that there wasn't a Greek or Hebrew scholar in the room. There are some great resources.
You gotta call me out.
You've only done it twice, so there are some great resources I think that are available. The first thing I would say to do is there's an article by Joanna Hoyt that I'll have Truth Book Co. and Stephen, our producer, or not Stephen, Jordan, our producer. We just miss Stephen,
He's got to come back and take over.
Yeah. So I'll have him link in maybe the description or show notes. But she wrote an article on the humility and caution and with some rules around using biblical languages and using a dictionary when you're maybe have some intermediate or very introductory level understanding of language. I think even if you have a very introductory understanding of the language, you can still use it. And I think you can use it well. What I would say with that is to verify if you're looking at the language, check what you're thinking against your Bible and the way it's already translated. And if you have a solid commentary on the text, it will probably already highlight some of those things that might have caused you to dive into that and check. Outside of that, if you're looking to learn or get started learning the language, there are all kinds of certificates that you can do with different colleges. Now, I will caution against maybe pursuing the learning of biblical languages everywhere, just because some programs will bring with it theological use of language as opposed to using the grammatical rules of the language and just teaching you the language, right? And so, again, just because someone is a native user of those languages does not mean that they are using it in the way that the biblical Hebrew or Greek is required for us to read it. So those would be, of course, starting places would cost some funds, but there are different free resources that are available on YouTube, I think, as well. There is a channel hosted by a man named Ted Hildebrand. I think that's who it is, where he's got some things where it's reading through texts in Hebrew and teaching some of those introductory things. There's
Let me ask you this, or did you have one there you want to share?
Yeah, go for it.
Let me ask you this, because I know that there are several seminaries or even something like Zondervan, or I guess I haven't checked about Baker, but I feel like Zondervan was one, whether it's a publisher like that or seminaries that actually have a series of online videos that are lectures on different languages. What are your thoughts about those types?
I think Zondervan has a great one. I think it's like you can get it during Black Friday usually, I think, for $200, and that would be you learning the language.
But what? So that's actually one that they would purchase from
Zondervan. Yeah.
Have you seen any of those that it's like a playlist?
Well,
where it's just the
built
videos
into
on
that.
YouTube?
I think that Zondervan has published their videos from that on YouTube.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
that's one where they can, if for someone who has the time and wants to put in the work, they can buy the course and pursue it.
More.
Yeah. And for someone who's just wanting to get more familiar with it, I think they can probably settle with the YouTube videos. For someone who's wanting to pay money and get maybe college credit for it, there are a lot of colleges that partner with Bible Mesh. And those are well-established built courses that I think would be beneficial for people to take. I think those are great places to do it. Or you can do the great route that Brother Herbst and I have done here, Andrew and I have done, where you can go to a Bible college or a seminary and get your undergrad or graduate degree and take languages in both. I know that we both did that with our undergrads and grad schools, and so those are always options. And as far as like books go, I think there are some great introductory textbooks on learning the language. But I think one of the funnest things that someone can do is, and maybe most immediately impactful at no cost, is to just grab the alphabet for both Hebrew and Greek memorize the alphabet, and pick up maybe a solid concordance, or maybe not even a solid concordance, but a solid lexicon. A lexicon is in a way similar to a dictionary, where it will go for, depending on the language, you will look for the words, the definition of the words. It also offers usage of words at times, but you would have to know the alphabet to look them up. So that's what I would say is, if you're not wanting to spend all of the time, have humility with it. Learn the alphabet, grab a great concordance. I think now this one would be expensive, so I might not recommend it for everyone to buy. But for Old Testament Halot, that one is Kohler and Baumgartner. There is an abbreviated version by Holiday. Yeah. That's much, much, much more affordable. Yeah. Grab that one. For the New Testament, I think of BDAG, and that one's accessible. I think it's probably cheaper than
BDAG, and that's is it an acronym?
Yes. Yeah. It's, what is it? Bauer, Danker. I can't remember
I forget them all.
Gingrich, I think. So that one. Now they're probably the most common that you'd find, and I think the cheaper version is the second edition, which has a lot of great things in it. The third edition has some corrections that are debated corrections. So it might be better, it might not be better, depending on how refined of an argument you're looking to making. But if you're just looking to better engage with the languages as you preach or as you teach, the second edition would be perfectly all right. There's a lot of meat in there. So
yeah, no, that's great. And thinking about arguments from the language, or we've been using that word nuance at least a couple times, that it doesn't even have, when you're looking through these things, you don't even have to get super, what I'm trying to explain is you don't have to get this idea that I have to find this complex argument. Yeah. I pulled up Hebrews 1 just as an example where when it says in Hebrews 1 that thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. A scepter of righteousness is the kingdom of of the scepter is of thy kingdom. You can pull up Blue Letter Bible and show how those are in the singular, thy kingdom, thy throne. And then when you look and see that this is quoting from the Psalms and go to the same issue there, that it's thy throne. In the Old Testament, who in Psalms, who's the focus there? Is that it's just God, right? Thy throne.
I believe so. I'd have to look at it, but I believe so.
Yeah. And then in Hebrews 1, it's, but unto the Son he saith. It says, thy throne, O God, calling the Son God, showing how in the singular, there's an argument, a very simple argument showing the oneness of the one on the throne. Yeah. And so I share that because you don't have to, put all of this language, all of these things together. You could just maybe do just a little brief study of these singular words, these statements, and looking at, and to plug the King James, that's why those these and thous are so critical, because they accurately show what the Hebrew and the Greek are saying. And some people, I mean, we're not talking about translations necessarily in this bonus episode, but when people try to say that, it's the these and the thous that trip me up. Well, that's okay. I read a statement that says habitual exposure breeds familiarity. Habitual exposure breeds familiarity. That if you just get down into the word, even just in the English, and you can see the value of the these and the thous, that some are singular, some are plural, and the focus there, what that draws out. You can dig in the Hebrew and Greek, and this whole bonus episode it's good to do that. Yeah. But the English has some nuggets there too, that we could pay attention and really glean some cool things from.
Yeah. I think absolutely. I don't know that I have anything or much more to add to it, except for I think it's a lot of fun to just work through a text in the original language. It is a lot of fun. I as I do devotion, what I find myself doing is I enjoy the Psalms in the original language. and it helps me stay or keep practice with my Hebrew. But it's just a lot of fun because of the poetic nature of the Psalms, and it's hard in a sense to recreate in English. It is especially difficult, and I would say almost impossible to recreate in English if you are trying to make Hebrew fit into English. And if you have a good translation that is trying to make English fit into Hebrew, I think it makes it a lot better. And you can catch the poetic nature. But with everything, like you mentioned, it takes reading the text more than once. You can't shortcut that. And if you're looking for a translation that shortcuts that and dumbs it down for you, as it dumbs it down, you're probably going to stay right where you are in your understanding of what's being communicated. So,
just for the fun of it, we're at 30 minutes here, but just for the fun of it, do you want to share a little bit of the kind of things that you're reading or some of the things that you're studying, just in general, just a general kind of what are you enjoying in your research?
Yeah. So like, are we thinking about like the Psalms or just the Old Testament as a whole?
Just as a whole. Yeah. Not about your thesis that you're still working on, but just kind of some things in general that you're really enjoying learning.
Yeah. Put me on the spot here. So one of the things that I've enjoyed, and I think I've mentioned this to you before, is so looking at Psalm 1, just to go back, because since I was talking about the Psalms, the construction of Psalm 1:1 lends toward understanding the man that's referred to there, the Haish in the Hebrew, kind of denotes a specific kind of person. And what's interesting is you read the language there, and these are things that you would normally find in a kind of, I don't want to say monarchical setting, but within a ruling setting. So you have council, you have a seat or an important seat. You have these things, and so the idea is already there. It's already present that this kind of person that's going to be blessed, in a sense, is this royal type figure. I think about, is it Rehoboam who takes counsel from the elders, rejects it, takes counsel from the young men, and he has the wrong counsel, right? So blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. Now, when I read about, and this also goes back to the point of some of the things that we've discussed this past semester, is understanding the Old Testament and how it develops is very important. When you read Deuteronomy 17 and they get to the promised land, and there's a king that's going to be established over them, there are 4 negatives. He can't do these things. There's one thing he has to do.
Yeah.
And he has to copy. When he sits in the throne, when he takes a seat, he is supposed to take counsel from the thing that he is copying in word for word, the law. Every word of the book of the law, he's supposed to copy. And so when you get to verse 2, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, which bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. Then it says, the ungodly are not so. They're like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Therefore the ungodly shall not, stand in the congregation of the righteous, nor, I'm butchering it now. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. And so you catch at the beginning that this kind of person, which I think we're all called to be royal priesthood, kings and priests, right? This royal person has a path that they're supposed to be on. And if they mistake this path with the wrong kind of direction, if they mistake this path by giving their ear, taking counsel from ungodly, unwise, when they sit to make judgment in their life, if it's not governed by the law of the Lord, there's no delight, there's no prosperity. Because the Lord knows the way of the righteous, Now, if you do the other thing, if you take the counsel of the ungodly, the end of it is you're going to perish. But you're also not going to be firm and planted. You're going to be tossed by the wind. I think about the New Testament when Paul talks about being tossed by every wind and wave of doctrine. He also tells the Colossians, be rooted, established in the faith. So it's very important for us, I think, to understand what's being argued there. And that's one of the things I went on a rant there. That's one of the things that I love about learning the languages. It helps you, those nuances that are, those connections that are being drawn for you as you read some of the Psalms and some of the other texts.
Yeah. No, I love it. All right. Sounds good. Yeah. I think we hit some fun things here, and looking forward to our next episode on the Apostolic Classroom. And we got Truth Book Co. Jordan Fry helping us out. And you're the director of IBC Online Learning, building a really cool program. And so people can check that out. IBC, Indiana Bible College website, and contact you about questions about the program.
Yeah.
All that good stuff. So,
Awesome.
All right.